And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Melissa McNeill, who had a near-death experience due to drowning, which we're going to learn about and more. Melissa, thanks for joining me and welcome.
Hi, thanks so much, Jeff, for having me.
Let's start on the day that you drowned and go from there.
It was 1976. I was 12 years old, and my brother and I were every year during the summer. My mother would take us on a vacation for a month to a beach. This particular year, we were at Cocoa Beach at Cape Canaveral in Florida, and we were staying in a cottage. And there were no lifeguards or anything. It's a private beach, so there were no lifeguards or anything out there. Not public beach, so there weren't many people. And it was hurricane season. And my brother and I were fearless. I was a tomboy, nothing. I rode skateboards and rode horses, and so I was fearless. And so anyway, the current, of course, the waves were going crazy, and we were out there on our rafts, which we'd done 1,000 times. And we went out as far as we could go, and literally the land was, it looked minuscule from where we were at. And again, neither one of us were afraid. We thought we'll catch a really good wave and we'll make it in. Well, he caught a wave, and when the wave hit me, the rope that I was holding onto to hold me on the raft broke. And I just remember tumbling under. The waves were so powerful. I always say they were probably anywhere from 2 to 4 feet. And when you're a little 12-year-old and you don't have anything to ride on, that's intimidating. But anyway, the waves just kept knocking me under. And as I kind of get my bearings and find, because I was getting disoriented. And as soon as I got my bearings and, could make it back up and get a breath, there was another one right behind it. And it was coming from all different directions. And I didn't realize until years later, I had been caught in a rip current. And so no matter how hard I thought, I was either being drawn back or not going anywhere. And I was out there a good hour fighting these. And thank God I was a strong swimmer. And I remember my brother was kind of my focal point because I could see him trying to bring the raft out to me. So it was giving me a little more fight. But it finally got to a point where I was exhausted, and I just couldn't fight the current anymore. And I remember the last wave knocking me under, and I just started drifting down. And I knew I was going to die. That was it. It was the end of me. And instead of getting panicked like I had been trying to swim, out of the rip current, it was just this incredible peace. I was like, wow, this is really awesome. And at that point, I didn't feel like I was in water anymore. It felt more like, I don't know, space. I couldn't feel the wet. I couldn't see anything. It was very dark. But as I'm drifting down, I remember thinking about my little dog. And I thought, well, she's going to miss me. And just as soon as I had that thought, a dolphin must have come underneath me and just, because I remember something very slick and hard and big. I could feel it under my feet. And the next thing I know, I'm being shoved up to the surface, and I'm still exhausted. And so I would go back under, and this dolphin kept pushing me up out of the water. Did probably about 3 times. And I think what it did was it propelled me past the rip current. Because once I got the third shove, I was able to swim to shore. My brother finally got out to me about halfway, and he was holding me up out of the water, and because he knew I was exhausted, and he was trying to, keep me from going under anymore. So, of course, at the time I was very traumatized. I didn't really put much thought into it over the years. But things started happening. I started getting visions. I started having spirits visit me. When I was in Hawaii, I lived in Hawaii for a couple of years. My kids and I went out there on sabbatical, and I ended up staying for a while. And there was a condo that we lived in that I understand there was a sort of a voodoo doctor, I guess you could call him, a Hawaiian doctor, that told me that there was a menehune living in my apartment. And because I kept falling down the second step when I would go up and down the stairs. And one time I ended up breaking my toe, tripping over the step. And he took this pendulum out and started putting it over my toe. And he said, you didn't fall, you didn't trip, you were pushed. And so, but I could hear the voices. My kids could hear my voice when I wasn't at home saying, hey, kids, I'm home, but nothing ever appeared. There were lots of things like that. Well, after my dad passed away, I had an experience when I was sleeping, and I was woken up by the room got very, very cold. And I just smelled this overwhelming smell of flowers. And it was a freezing cold, but it felt comfortable, if that makes any sense at all. And I knew immediately it was my dad's spirit. And I really got the sense that he was telling me, you were right. There is an afterlife. And, and just to greet me, and I want to cry because it was such a beautiful gesture of like, I didn't know if he even cared about me in life, but I knew this was him saying, sorry for everything maybe that I put you through, or, but I love you. And I'm here to, I've come to back to this plane to tell you, that I love you, basically. And it was the most beautiful experience I'd ever had. And I just knew it was him. So little things like that would continue to happen. I never read much into them because I didn't understand anything about NDEs or STs or spirit realms or channeling or any of that. So it started coming more and more as I had gotten older.
While you were under the water, when you started drifting under the water and it became peaceful and kind of like space, had you already stopped breathing?
Yes, I had to have. I must have been holding my breath because I didn't inhale any water. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if what came out of my body, my spirit came out of my body. All I know was it was a different atmosphere. I didn't feel like I was underwater anymore.
But you did feel at total peace and happiness.
At complete peace. Yeah, like I said, the last memory I had was of my little dog missing me, and just peace. Like I'm dying, and it's okay. There was no fear, no panic. It was probably the most peace I'd ever known, and it was so brief.
After your NDE, once you started hearing voices and stuff, do you think those were good entities or bad ones? Or both?
I think I've had both, but I think that because I had a very low energy myself. I had come from being raised by a narcissist. I had a lot of verbal and mental and emotional abuse in my life. So I had negative kind of vibrations myself. So I think that they were kind of drawn to me because I was haunted. I mean, like I said, when I was in Hawaii, it was definitely a malevolent entity that was haunting the apartment and me. What and I hate to call him a voodoo doctor, but I can't think of another name for him. But he he told me that she was jealous of me and that I needed to get the house exercised. And honestly, I think she may have, become attached to me because nothing good really happened to me for a long time after that. But I had more negative energies seem present in my life than the positive ones. The positive ones didn't come until I was about 50, when I was caught in a family cult, which I wasn't aware of until I was already in it. At that point, because of the perpetual trauma and torment and berating, mental and emotional abuse, It was a cult, and I'm the best I can figure is they were trying to brainwash me, trying to get me to submit. And so it had gotten to a point where, and I think I was already sensitive to spirits, that I feel like spirit guides started coming in, because I started almost recognizing them. It was like I knew some of them, and I could visually see them, but it was like almost like I was in another realm, like in a movie theater. That's kind of what it was, like a spotlight, and it looked like we were in maybe a theater or something like that. And I had met like 6 little, and I call them little fellers because they were just little mini entities. But the first one, and I remember I was right in the middle of being just bombarded with this gaslighting and verbal abuse. And my spirit just left my body, I guess, because I don't remember anything happening from that point here on earth. I remember just being kind of taken away to this theater setting. And there was this little, and I couldn't see the face, but it looked like they had a little hat and a robe on, with a little belt. And they had a pointer, like, you point on a chalkboard or something like that. And they said, don't be afraid. It said, don't be afraid. I'm here for knowledge, kindness, and love. And I just remember feeling so safe and so at peace. And it didn't seem unusual at all that I just went out of my body and came into this space. But I was like, where am I? Why am I here? And they said, we're here to give you knowledge. And so they started writing there. It was telepathic, but they were also writing words. Like it was almost like a whiteboard, and they were writing words of healing. This is what you need to do, self-love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, all these different things. And it got to a point where they had to write so many words because it was like I wasn't getting it. I guess I was still in that mode of why am I here? What is this all about? And and so the words started going off the board onto the walls and then onto the floor. And I just remember becoming overwhelmed and saying, I'll never remember this. I said, I'm going to be more screwed up. And I said this, I'm going to be more screwed up trying to remember all this than if I just, and they said, it's okay. You don't have to remember all of this. And no sooner did I go from them saying that to another entity, to another space. And this happened about 6 times. And I couldn't tell you how long it took. It might have been 3 minutes, but it felt like a month. I mean, it just felt like I was there forever. And it was like one of those no time or space things that I've heard about. But and anyway, I got to this next entity, and again, I couldn't make it. There wasn't a face, so to speak. It was more like a kind of a cloud, but it wore a hat and it wore a robe, but it was a different color robe. It was more gold. And it was there to tell me, warn me, I guess, against the cult and then the relationship that I was in with this malignant narcissist, because there were nothing but just boxes all over the place. And it just said on all the boxes, little, small, round, square, rectangular lies. And I remember thinking, I'm here for him. Like, I'm here to help this guy, love this man well. And that's what I was thinking they were trying to teach me, not warn me, but teach me, okay, these are the things that you need to, get him to help him heal. And I remember we had this conversation about, well, what if he doesn't tell the truth? What if he continues to be a pathological liar? And I was shown this tunnel, and he pointed to the tunnel. And again, it was very telepathic. He wasn't writing, just the first one. And he pointed toward this tunnel, but there was no light at the end of it. And I remember just thinking, so his soul's going to go someplace not good. And he said, yes, but that's his choice. I said, can't we tell him that? And he said, no, we can't do anything. It has to come from him. And I basically begged him. I said, can you do something? Because I'm thinking you have authority here. And he said, no, it has to come from him. And he said an expletive. He's like, oh, he said, okay, I'll tell you one thing. He said he lied to you about how many lovers he's had. And he said it wasn't X amount of numbers. He said it was only like 4. And I'm like, that is such a strange truth to be told, but I was able to relate it back to him, and it turned out to be true. So I'm thinking, why didn't he tell me about more of the lies? So I could have confronted him with those things. And then it went to another entity from that point. And it was almost like they were bouncing me from one, sort of realm to another. I felt like they were all in the same dimension, but I was being put, individually with each of these beings to try to, I guess, make me understand what it was I needed to learn. And I was so brainwashed at that point and trauma bonded that I didn't see until many years later. They were trying to help me. They were trying to make me aware so that I could get away. And they put a lot of work and effort into my escape. And that's when, do you want me to go into the rest of the entities that?
Well, let me ask you a couple questions real quick first. You said that these entities were little. Even though they were little, were they still humanoid?
I would say so. They were like little people.
All right.
Yeah. And I really want to tell you about the cowboy.
Do you still contact them today?
I think that I hear it. I hear them in my conscience. I mean, my life is so amazing today, but I have my guides. I know they're here. I can talk to them in my mind. So they're here, but it's almost like they know I'm here we're here if you need us. But you're doing great, Missy. Kind of thing.
Oh, good.
So, but they're here. They're around. But I don't. I hear a lot of people talk about, well, I get channeling, or I can channel, or I can, connect with other beings or other places at will. And I've never been able to do that. They all just kind of came when they felt that I needed them the most. And I didn't believe in channeling. I didn't believe in all the psychic stuff. I was very skeptical. I mean, even though I had kind of my own experiences, I just felt like they were isolated. And just never put much thought into it. But this is very real. These beings, these guardian angels, and God. I mean, let me just backtrack a second, because this is really important. Before I was drawn into that realm with the little fellers, there was Jesus, or God, touched my shoulder. I could see it. It was translucent, and it was huge. And I just remember, as soon as I felt that touch and I looked over to my right shoulder, and I felt more love and more peace and more, it was otherworldly. And I knew immediately, I'm like, oh my God, God is here for me. And I dropped to my knees. I literally dropped to my knees and started weeping. I was like, what have I done to deserve God coming and touching me? And then I was drawn off into the realm with the little fellers.
How did you end up getting out of this whole situation?
Out of the relationship, out of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
They guided me. I was actually channeling, and I think it was one of my spirit guides. I think she lived maybe in the 19th century. She was a slave, and I think in the 1800s. And I got a visual of her and everything. Well, she came to me and she channeled through me. And she stood up to these people. She didn't back down. And I had a Cajun accent, French Cajun. I couldn't do that over again. I couldn't. And it lasted for days. And it actually scared them. And she would say things to me in my mind like, Don't you let them push you around. You know, you're stronger than you think you are. But as soon as I started getting weaker, I started to um, give in, I guess, submit. Um, she would stand up and confront these people. And is she just the love and the strength in her? And she was there to protect me. Um, and, you know, I know I couldn't have done it without them, but there were times I had woken up one morning and I felt like a different person. And I think it might have been a walk-in. I've recently heard about walk-ins because every time I would get to a point where I really thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown or I was going to, you know, collapse mentally, I would wake up rejuvenated and resilient and refreshed. And I remember one morning walking in, looking in the mirror, and I was kind of even looking around my house going, this is strange. Like almost that I recognized it, but I didn't belong here. And I went and I looked in the mirror and I was ragged. I mean, I was just worn out. I was skin and bones. I was, you know, on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And I looked in the mirror at myself. I felt great. My energy felt great. The spirit felt great. But that body I was looking at, I was like, oh, you poor thing, what has happened to you? You know, and that was the sense that I got looking at myself. And I was happy, I was energetic, I was able to basically not even put any stock into these people or the things they were saying, the things that they were doing to me. I knew that it was them. Things were rational, they made sense. And this happened multiple times. When I would get beaten down so far, they would bring me back up. And they guided me on how to get out. I had attempted to get out one time before, but he had cut the brake lines in the truck. And I ended up wrecking into the mountain trying to leave. So the escape was basically I had to pretend like I submitted. And so I agreed with everything they said. I did everything they wanted me to do. I convinced him or tried to convince him that I had his best interest at heart and that I really loved him and that he was the only thing on the planet that, you know, existed in my world. And I had to keep this facade up for a year and then finally convince him to take me to Georgia. In Georgia, I had friends that because he had sabotaged all of my support system, calculated, you know, over the course of years, unbeknownst to me. Because I mean, at one point, I couldn't even have a phone. So it was years before I was even able to contact anybody. That's how much they had isolated me. And it was on a mountain, 5,000 feet up on private land. So they were able to kind of keep me hostage. So I don't know if he was playing my game or I was playing his game, but he eventually agreed to let me go to Georgia. And I said, we got to get you away from here. This family is not good for you. You're a great man. And so we went down there, and I think he knew there was something up my sleeve the whole time because he got more violent and more aggressive and more abusive than he ever had. And he was very good at it. He was the best storyteller. He was the best manipulator. But this was almost like a caged animal. And so I think he thought something was up. So it was brutal. And I really thought I was going to end it. My life would end on that trip. I didn't think I'd make it to my friends because I didn't have access to a phone. He wouldn't leave me alone. He even had us sleeping in a car at one point because he didn't want me around people. And the day that I finally got away, I was driving and he was sitting next to me and I saw the phone on the console and I thought, this is the only opportunity I have. And I said something to him and he cold cocked me and busted my eye and I just started bleeding. And in that second, I thought, this is it. I was overwhelmed with joy. I thought, take this phone. I threw it out the window. I slammed on the brakes. I ran back to the phone. He apparently had a hidden second phone. And so when I threw the phone out the window and ran out and grabbed it, I called 911. And I thought, this is it. I'm finally free. No, he had planned for this. So with his second phone, he was calling the police too, saying I hit him first. And in Georgia, if it's a domestic situation, you both go to jail. No questions asked. So I'm thinking, and I've never been in jail before. So I'm thinking, this is another, I can't even trust the system now. So I'm at this point, I'm like, see, all my hard work isn't paying off. But I kept remembering what the entity said. I had asked them, why are you not telling me what I need to know for me to heal? And they kept telling me, you're going to be fine. And I like, when am I going to see this? Because I'm not feeling it right now. So even though I wasn't channeling anymore and I wasn't seeing them and they weren't like becoming visible to me, they were here. And so every time I started to give up, like when I remember I was in jail for like 2 or 3 hours and I was just, I'd given up. And I heard this voice in my head say, you're going to be fine. So I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I happened to have the keys to the car. So when they released me, I was able to escape and go to my friends. And from that point on, I was free. I never saw them again.
Well, that's an amazing story.
Thank you. I wrote a book about it. That's how, and to be honest with you, I didn't even know about cults. I didn't know any, I mean, yeah, I heard of them. I'd seen them in movies, Deliverance, you know, but I never, you know, it's hard to believe it's real until you've been exposed to one. And it is by far the most mentally challenging, brutal. It's probably likened to a concentration camp.
When I think of a cult, I think of something religious, spiritual, or something. Was there that aspect to it?
Yeah, they wouldn't manipulate the Bible because my relationship with God, especially after he touched me, was on. I think they were satanic because he was able to do something. He was able to take me into realms like he could do that, and they were dark realms. The one thing that I was blessed with was God was always with me. So when he would take me into these dark places with these shadow entities, with these, it was like they were trying to attack me. There was always this white robe in front of me, hiding me. And I wasn't afraid. I wasn't at all afraid of these entities, the dark energies at all. Because I had, you know, God had my back, I guess. Or spirit guides or whatever. I know for sure the hand that touched me was God. I think the other ones, a lot of those were more spirit guides and things like that. But the dark energies couldn't touch me anymore. Like when I was younger and in Hawaii, the malevolent energies were able to really control me because I didn't know what was happening. But I think because I had grown in faith and and connected somehow, however God chose to use me, I was safe and I was protected. So I don't have those experiences anymore.
After your NDE, did you get any other abilities?
In my intuition, you know, like I said, I'm actually trying, I understand you can, if you have a knack for channeling, you can nurture it and kind of, but I haven't gotten there yet. But my intuition is spot on. I have a very strong sense of people's intentions. And when someone lies to me, it's almost as if they're telling me the truth. I don't hear the lie. I hear, okay, this is what happened. This is what I did. This is, and the lie just is kind of flipped into the truth. So, and I've been in situations like this where I've had to confront them and I could tell them to a T what the truth was, even though I wasn't there, I didn't experience it. So my intuition has been probably, and I think it's really protected me and it's saving me, and it's helping keep me on the path of my purpose. And I understand my purpose now. That's another thing. I don't know if that's a gift, but I know how to manifest now. Like I said, I understand intentions. If someone has a dark intention, or especially if I'm involved, I can know what it is and know how to retroact that.
Can you give us an example of your manifestation?
Yes. His most recent one is kind of funny because I mean, I'm not big into manifesting. I more want to manifest fulfillment and helping others and serving, because the message that I got from all these guides and God is knowledge, kindness, and love. So it's my duty now to serve others and to try, you know, that's my course in life. That's my purpose. But I didn't have a car. So when I left him, he ended up having my car stolen. So for the last 2 years, I've basically been, not last two, it's been 3 years, but up until 2 years ago, I was stopped running. And I didn't have transportation. And I'm on a limited, I'm on a budget. And so it was difficult for me to buy one. And I remember telling my friend, I said, you know, I'm going to manifest a car. Nothing had changed. No, I didn't win the lottery. Nothing, you know, spectacular happened. And I said, I'm going to manifest it. This was in January. I said, I'm going to manifest it for February. In a month, how are you going to make that happen? I don't know, but it's going to happen. And but February 28th, I got my new car. And it was, and another little thing recently was in the business aspect of things. I'm not a businesswoman, or not, you know, I never thought of myself as one. But I make jewelry, you know, that's kind of a hobby, but I also, it's a little business that I have. And I remember saying, I'm going to manifest this to become a real business. And it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. And I ran into this lady just completely out of nowhere, who happened to be, she worked for the Chamber of Commerce, but she works a lot with women who are subject to violence and things like that. So she has a foundation that helps these women. And she needed someone. She had a lady that used to do her jewelry. And I met her through a friend, and she said, I'm bringing you onto my team. She never saw my work. She said, I'm bringing you onto my team. They told her about the book. So she knew that I had a soft spot for this area. And it just came together. And that was very lucrative. And it was just and this happened in the 2 weeks period that I had planned on my business really coming to fruition. So I'm like, well, this is really cool. What am I going to manifest next?
Well, how do you manifest?
I believe it's true. If there's something, and I don't try to manifest things that I want, but things that I need, or things that are supposed to come to me to serve my purpose. But excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. But I just believe, like with the car, I could picture it in my driveway. I pictured the keys in my hand. I pictured driving it. I had it already in my mind. I just had it. So it wasn't even a thing of me having to go out and try to find a car. It came to me. And the same with the job. We were out shopping one day, me and some friends of mine, and we ran into this lady, and we just all started talking. And then that was right on the last day of the day I was going to manifest, you know, some work. And it wasn't just that work, but it was work for this foundation that is so close to my heart.
Well, you wrote a book about your experience that I believe is behind you, and it's called Cabin in the Mountains, right?
Cabin in the Mountains, yes, by Melissa McNeill.
If people want to find out more about it, should they go to a website or Amazon?
Yes, well, both. I have, my website is it's www. You don't even have to put in the www, but it's findingyourwayhomeatlast.com. Findingyourwayhomeatlast.com. That's my website. There you can read about my experiences. There's an author page. There's also links to buy the paperback, the hard copy, the ebook, the audiobook. And then people can also reach out to me. There's a comment section where they can send me messages, and I'll respond to anybody that writes in. And then, of course, Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, they can go there too. And then if anybody would like to, if they have a story that they feel like maybe I can help them with, or introduce them to, or find resources, or introduce them to something, they can go to johnsonmila545@gmail and send me a private comment.
Melissa, before we finish up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Knowledge, kindness, and love. I mean, that's what our purpose is. That's what everyone's purpose is. Knowledge is to gain wisdom, to learn from our past. Anything that we do in life, whether it's bad or good, you know, people have trauma in their life, and nobody goes, you know, avoids it. It just happens. But they're lessons. We're put on this earth. This is a teaching ground. This is a place where our souls are sent to learn something, and we each have our own lessons to learn. So that's the knowledge part. It's gaining wisdom from our experiences. So the traumatic experiences that we have, the losses, the abuse, anything like that, we can turn that into love. We can manifest that into knowledge and wisdom, and we can use that, like I'm hoping I can do with this book, to transform people's lives, to give them hope, to realize that something good comes out of something bad. God, He has a way of doing that, if you just have faith. And the kindness part, it's so important to be forgiving, understanding, not hypocritical, kind to people. And forgiveness, I know people have heard it 1,000 times, but it's not necessarily for them, but it's for you, but it's for everybody. Because once you've forgiven, that negative energy isn't attacking other people too. Because when we're unforgiving, even if it's not a person that we have to forgive, this rolls over onto everybody, because we carry it with us, that negative energy. And then, of course, love. I mean, that is the whole purpose of this universe, and God, and spirit, and so yeah. And also, I watched one of your podcasts one time, and this sweet girl, I can't think of her name, but she had said something I felt that was so profound, and that was, don't judge people for sinning differently than you do. We're all sinners. So, how can we be hypocrites, and how can we judge based on that? So I thought that was pretty profound.
Melissa, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It was so nice to meet you, and I'm so grateful that you gave me this opportunity.
Well, I'm grateful that you would come here and share with us.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.